You see my screen?
Just loading now. Yep, it's on.
Um, yeah, interesting day. Um, there's a couple points I think are important to talk about. Um, I actually ended up taking a small loser on one contract later today. We can talk about that one. But took some of these trades earlier on, so I think I'll kind of I ended up net profit for the day. Um, the one that Dan took around three, which would be
Oh no, not the one that not the one that Dan took. It's that one there. The next one across the lower high. That one was the one I was looking at. But I was having tea at the time, so I missed it.
so. Before we dive in deeper, I took three today of all things. I took this one on one contract. I talked about it in the Discord. I didn't love it. Um, I did take this lower high, and then I did take this one end of the day on just one contract. Failed out, um, but we can look at that in here in a second. Hey, Robert. If early in the day you guys want to discuss, I'll be real honest. I did
Yeah,
not. Yeah, go ahead.
just near where you're looking now, you've got the small range, and then you've got the that one there. Dan marked that one. I did look at that one, but I couldn't take it because for me that's a double bar. So I thought it could have gone sideways there for a little bit.
As a green or a red?
I'm not too sure, to be honest, what he marked it as.
I'm assuming it's being marked as like a failed break out the top, right?
Yeah,
This one for me is a little close, right? Just because in this scenario, I could definitely foresee a second push up. You're kind of, I like taking my failed breakout kind of with a more well defined area of, okay, I know we're in a sideways area or kind of with the movement in. Um, yeah, I don't love it. It's a little too much. Like you could be trying to catch the market, get another like push up from here. Um, I still feel like there is a direction bias here, so I don't necessarily love the trade, but I can see where the argument is. Right? It's what you're saying is, and the over the weekend as I was studying, I think the term that I really came to kind of grasp in a lot of this is the word weight, right? How much weight do certain things hold? And the only thing I can really say to all that is, part of my takeaway from today was real hard to find trends and key entry points I felt good about. At the same time, I don't feel like it was mixed in a good way. That's interesting. Sorry, I just noticed that. But yeah, overall, I feel like what you're saying here is you're saying that you're pretty confident that this move, and this move are entirely done. So you're saying, okay, the weight of this overrides everything else that's going on, which I'm not sure I feel confident in saying that at this point in the chart, if that makes sense. Um, I still feel like there's something larger happening here. We're having a hard time breaking through the EMA, right? See prices shot up quickly and shot up again. To me, that tells me EMA that's holding a little more stronger. Check. I would have loved this one here in trading day, Um, Not much else to say besides this is really just saying you feel better about this failed breakout versus everything that's happened, which you can make the argument, and I think you're right with it being an inside bar, but at the same time, I do think in this small context, you could play it as the double top here, right? Um,
I think some people took the higher low also, or lower. I'm sorry, lower high. Yeah, there.
a
Because
yeah,
there was a couple people like, yeah, I got a 10-point runner in 2 seconds.
I always feel
It's kind of
with this style of lower high, once you take it, like I think Dan was talking about like this one right here, right? For me, it's like once you make it back to the EMA, that's real tough to then take a lower high directly into the EMA. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to another trader earlier today, and it's a lot of times, especially on days like today, you can take some of these trades and maybe you get that one win today, right? But I think all of us are striving to have, relatively consistent success. So yeah, a trade like this may work, it's just, to me, it's good luck trying to take this over and over. Another trader expressing his frustration sometimes with, you know, uh, in the Discord when you hear so many people taking, you know, winning trades, right? But then oftentimes these same traders talk about how they're not consistently profitable, right? So it's okay if you just go out and take everything, right? Doesn't necessarily mean you're out here making money. Like you're just posting your wins, and you didn't post the next three losses that you took. Um, there are some discussions on this lower high. For me, the thing I see here that I probably give it the most evidence is if you were to say that this was a range right here, you're basically saying not just lower high, you're saying prices then broke out the bottom here. Use it kind of as a breakout pullback. Support turns resistance, and that's what you're kind of using there.
I took one early. I don't know how it looks on this chart because I took it on the second chart, but I think it is an entry. It's right after the open. Yeah, there's a second entry just below there. So it's actually on this chart as well. It looks pretty stacked, honestly. No, to the right. So it's kind of a breakout retest. Keep going. A little bit more. Yeah, that one. That's the one I took. I think I went a little short of 2 points just because I didn't want to do it because of that bottom. So usually I take profit at 2 points, but I put it at the bottom swing there. It was cleaner on the second chart.
On the second chart, did it have this one giant bar over here?
Let me look.
So I think the read, as far as you saying,
It did have a big.
okay,
Yeah, it honestly did have a big bar on the second chart. Yeah.
right, and I think this is something that, Robert, I'm actually happy to hear you actually even saying that you saw that part, because really it works or not, this big bar or not, right? It is a little stacked, but the fact that you're saying, okay, you're looking at this as a development of support, right? And this isn't this isn't just a second entry short. This isn't just a breakup or pullback. What it is you're reading this as a development of support. Prices broke out, and then you're using this area, right, and this previous support as resistance, which, fair enough. I mean, we can all see it's a little bit aggressive on the entry, But the read itself, that's kind of exactly kind of things we've been looking at over the past couple of weeks, right? Is being able to leverage multiple things and, you know, being able to pay attention to multiple things, right? Um, so I think that's fine. Um,
Mm.
because that really, the principle's there, right? We're in this section where once we kind of get down here, does it congest a bit? Yes. But we're kind of saying that, okay, all this is done, right? Like we have one significant area that we're paying attention to, and price is pretty strongly rejected. Excuse me. Off of it. So I think that's a fine entry. We'll see if it gets marked. I think on the chart, but
Yeah.
I think as far as the read itself, that's a good read.
I mean, it looks a little stacked.
Everything that's just being stacked with stacked inside this bar, you know.
And then an interesting trade that Dan took, I believe, is that second entry a little below there. It's a green, a little bit lower, the next one. Keep going. There. Yep, Dan took that one. He wasn't going to say anything about it, but someone asked. He said, yeah, I wasn't going to mention to you guys that I took it.
So this is where I think.
But he gave some explanation in the Discord about it that was pretty interesting.
I see on it, but what did he say? I mean, I don't want to touch it through.
The strength of the downtrend and kind of viewing it as a third touch. He just felt like that would all override the fact that it didn't quite get a new high. The key entry point, the EMA. I mean, he said it was aggressive. He but he liked it.
Or, we've talked about, and I really am going to, hammer home this idea of, I think towards the last 6 months, my computer is froze.
Yes.
Yep.
Just for a second. The last 6 months of last year, I really hammered home market structure, right? Phases of the market, things going on. And as we continue to have these calls, really, and it's the same two things that Dan is looking at in almost every setup, right? One, does the prices move to where he wants to cleanly? Yes or no? And if they don't, you need something there you believe in that is stronger than everything else. He uses his word dominant pattern, right? And that's where this is, right? You have, and I bet you the counter argument is everyone probably drew their short-term trend up and said, hey, what about the STT, right? Well,
yep.
This is not, like, if you were just to isolate, like, just this, semi-decent enough of a read, but it's also, you're coming from a place of, okay, I just don't believe in anything from pre-market, right? You're basically saying, okay, I don't love any of this. I don't think there's anything here that is structurally dominant and having an influence in the market. So therefore, even though, I'm saying this because it helps explain some things later, particularly great about this downtrend, right? Because it's really a move down, chop, 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 move down. And I bet he would say that this chop almost is kind of like a reason to believe in the trend because you have such a strong move down and prices aren't being able to counter. So it's just moving to the trend line, strong rejection, right? So you're not getting a clean move. It's all sideways. In this, because you're saying, if you guys were at the end of last year, we would talk about, when it comes to market structure, it's when the bias is having an influence in the market. Mac or Dan is looking for any reason to enter, right? And when there is no bias, they're looking for these small short-term structures, right? What Dan is basically saying is here, he believes in this downtrend. So he will take any even really not so great setup just to keep on going. You say, I believe in this move so much, I will take a poor looking setup just to get into this move. Right? You'll see Matt do that sometimes where he'll morph like an inside bar, or sometimes he'll bend the rules a little bit. It's for that exact reason.
Yeah.
Continue on that. I had a discussion about this trade in the Discord as well. I didn't love this one. I took it on one contract. Um, I did not love it, mainly because I did not feel like this downtrend structurally was all that great. This felt like movements, if anything, right? Um, there was a point you brought up last week that I've actually thought about a lot and went back and really studied, right? It's, when we don't get the clean legs back to the trend line, oftentimes, even if we get a trade that works, we'll eventually make that leg, right? And that leg is probably coming sooner rather than later, right? So I didn't like how we couldn't really consistently find the bottom of this. When we did, it was kind of choppy, right? So this makes me tell me, it's like, okay, maybe this, I don't know, didn't love it. This first leg, right, is coming out of congestion. So just like how we've talked about, like when you're in a range and you're going to the other side out of congestion, it's kind of dangerous, right? For me, I wasn't convinced that this was the first leg. I still took it because it was off a key entry point, right? But to what we discussed, that second leg, it does come, right? So what this is you're saying, point more than this ambiguity on the first, second leg, right? Because in my mind, really, this is the second entry right here, right? But on this trade, you're just relying on the key entry point, if that makes sense. I know Dan took this trade, and I know a bunch of other people took this trade. I don't love it. To me, it's not it's almost like I feel like this upward movement is stronger than the rejection coming off of it. This was, for me, working out pretty strongly. I think if we got a better lower high, I probably would have taken this lower high if it didn't set up such a massive bar for the size of this. But yeah. I don't know how either of you guys felt about that trade, or if you guys took it or.
No, that's very interesting, because even if you took the lower high, you would have maybe had the expectation of, I could probably go for 2 points or a little more because it's going to probably retest the low, but it doesn't. It makes another leg up. And that's the kind of stuff to me that gets tricky. And then, if you took a point, hey, great, I got a winner. I went for 4 ticks. But you were holding out for 2 or a little more, and then it doesn't make it. Then it comes back and hits your stop, and now it's a loss. That kind of stuff gets very frustrating.
I'm going to, in today's chart lesson that Matt posts, I'm going to really pay attention to how he discusses the legs here, right? Because coming out of congestion, I just don't love this. And I was talking to another trader on Discord as well. Like, if I felt good about this downtrend, right, it would have been a no-brainer trade. It's just about this structurally. If there's anything here that I probably should have paid more attention to, it's this right here, right? This move right here gives strength to this key entry point line, right? Like this lower high here. But this still, for me, felt like it was working its way up. And it took a second, right? Like, take this trade for the next bar to close with almost like a failure reversal out of there, this is close. You know, like we don't want to see trades like this. We want to see trades that really go, right? So to me, the reasons that we are cautious about this one, the fact that it took all this, like, you know, a couple bars with the work, kind of gives you evidence to that. And it didn't go very far, right? Like Robbie said, if this really was that strong of a trade, you would expect this to end up down here. You know, we barely make it out of it. So yeah. I'm sure on the call again, Robert. I took this trade lower high. I expecting the retest of the lows, fail breakout. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
Mm-hmm. The only argument here is you can make is at this point, you know, we have these three legs up, right? It does start to be like, okay, I'm not going to say we are in a wider trend up, right? But what you're saying here also for me is, okay, we've had one push up, two pushes up, three pushes up. Okay, this what if he just continues working up, especially if I didn't feel great about this downtrend to begin with. Right? So I did take two more aggressive trades here, both on one contract, both mainly just because we've been studying these concepts and I want to get better at them. I kind of saw this as a development of support, right? Higher low. Took it just back to the EMA. Didn't really work that much. I don't think it's going to get marked. I don't think it was a great trade, but I did take it just on one of the PAs. And really, just as a concept, it's, you know, we have talked at length about post-trend triple tests, right? Post-trend triple tests. Well, to see this support developing and then, you know, kind of just to reiterate it, this entire thing was built on me not being sure about this downtrend. Loss I've had, and I think since I looked at my trade performance, since I think like early December, only took it on one and only took it just because, like I said, we've been studying these. I'm trying to get better at them. Kind of funny. I even just said last week, I don't take higher lows off support, but I did take this one. Okay, we're going to this choppy, undecided. We keep on making some like these higher highs. So developing this support, taking the higher low off the support. Didn't work. You know, in the end, it's just super choppy here. And, you know, we end up making a second push down. So market structure wise, got a little caught up in it, but for me to learn from going forward.
You think Dan would say that it's just too congested?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm just congested too. It's just this whole area is choppy, right? At the time was we were making the higher highs as they're moving up, right? And I really think maybe the support was a little more ambiguous. It could be something like even something wider like that, right? And we just already had breaks. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm trying to study this exact move a little more in depth. So I will likely be a little more aggressive on these particular setups in future chart lessons and stuff like that. I think right. It's just at this point, it's, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bars. Usually, when you want to see this higher low, you want to see it like come down and have this higher low within like 3 to 4 bars, right? So I get it. Not a great trade, but I will be studying these a lot more. You guys saw? We're in these low volume days, so it's kind of hard to have a full chart lesson on some of these.
No, I don't have anything else. It was a little bit difficult with it, like what you say, with low volume. There wasn't really much to pay attention to.
This whole time I use this icon, right? And what I don't like is when you have these what I call like these trend stretchers, right? Where sometimes it's like you're getting these consistent moves, and then you get these large kind of pushes that really throw off the geometry of the trends. I mean, if you look at the day as a whole, I just don't see a ton of relatively consistent moves, right? We're getting a lot of north-south movement, but it's not really consistently finding shapes, right? It's these kind of weird moves sideways. Even the sideways chops don't have consistent highs and lows. So, yeah, there's
Do you think
no
that's because of low volume?
because of two things. I think it's because of number one, low volume. I think it's also because of we're near the all-time highs. You know, I think
Yeah.
I wrote a comment to Dan in the Discord. It's kind of like how when we are trading an individual day, right? And I'm just going to draw it. This is not a great example, but on an individual day, right? Let's say we have our overnight highs and lows, right? Once we get to the range, sometimes things get a little weird at the top or the bottom of the overnight highs and lows, right? I think it's something somewhat kind of similar, right? It's just like how we say, okay, if we have a middle term range that's heading towards a day's structure, right? I think we're trying to trade on the day to day scale, but the market from a, so okay, I guess the best way to put it, from a 2000 tick level to a day chart, right? Once we kind of run 2000 ticks on that scale to the overall day, it can get a little weird. I think from a day over day, month over month side, right? We're just hitting the top of this all time highs. So it's kind of like everything is at the mercy of the larger picture, right? We were just hypothetically overhead highs and lows, and we're heading down here, right? We would be careful once we got near the overnight lows. I think that's what's happening. Like if you were to take this and make all these charts like a single day, right, over the course of a year, that's kind of where we're at. We're hitting a significant area. So our price actually gets thrown off because of there's a larger shit going on. Excuse my language. Today, there wasn't really too much to discuss. I did want to bring up one thing though. Um, for future chart lessons, right? Over the weekend, actually, what I started doing is I started going through and looking through like old Discord posts, right? And just basically doing kind of a re-summary of pretty much every question Dan has like ever answered, right? So my question to you guys is, if you guys think it'd be worthwhile if we went through kind of did like a group study on some of Dan's posts, right? Because he does talk about certain concepts a little more in depth, and it's one thing to read it, but I guess to kind of rediscuss some of these concepts may be worthwhile. I don't know if you guys will see the same, but I was looking at that.
Sure.
Where he goes in depth. It's one thing to read it, but then as a group, if we were to kind of go over and like rediscuss it and really kind of nail down those concepts, I think that may be worthwhile. So, I think for today though, we'll call that there. I don't have too much else. Relatively slow trading day. Hopefully you guys got your trades out there, and yeah, we can reconvene tomorrow.
Thanks, RJ.